Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to share with you a roundup of all the eyeshadow palettes that I've reviewed in like the past 3 to 4 months. I want to let you guys know which ones I've been using the most, which ones I've used the least, if I regret buying certain ones, and how certain palettes compare to each other. So if you guys are interested in hearing about a ton of eyeshadow palettes, I have so many in front of me right now. If you're interested in hearing about them, how different palettes compare to each other, and which ones I recommend, then just keep on watching. Alright, so I'm not going to rank anything in any particular order just because I have so many thoughts, and there's nothing I really regret buying, but just certain palettes that I don't use as much as others. And a lot of the newer palettes I've gotten recently have replaced certain palettes, so I definitely want to let you guys know about them. So I'm just going to kind of pick and choose from a pile in front of me. And the first one I'm going to go with is the one from my everyday makeup drawer for December. So I put this in my everyday makeup drawer because I have not touched this palette since October. I barely use this palette and I like it. I like the formula, I like the shades, but there's a couple reasons why I don't use it a lot. And this is a $42 palette. It's the Anastasia Prism palette. I'm not sure if I mentioned that. I have a dedicated review tutorial on this palette, and the shades are stunning. Like, some of the shimmer shades in here are so pigmented, gorgeous shades that I need to start using more of. But the reason I don't use this palette so much is, one, it's really colorful, and I'm doing neutral looks like at least half the time, probably more than that, probably like 5 days a week. But even when I go for a colorful look, I don't want to commit to like full on color where I really need to concentrate and think about my eye look. Like, I don't have that kind of time these days. So that's why I don't reach for this palette as much. There's some other colorful palettes where all the transition shades in it make sense, and you can kind of see where an eye look's gonna go with it. But with this, like, you need to study this palette before you get into it, unless like you're super skilled at eyeshadow and like color combinations. That is not my forte. So whenever I look at this palette, I just get like overwhelmed, and I'm like, I don't have time to think about this right now, so I put it away. So this just doesn't have those like warm matte colors, like warm browns, very neutral colors that I can kind of play it safe with whenever I'm using a more colorful shade on my lid or lower lash line. So you really need to commit to color combination and getting really creative with this palette, because to me, a lot of things don't make sense immediately. You really need to just try and figure it out, and there's a lot of trial and error with the colors in here, and that's why I don't reach for it as much, because I get a little bit lazy with eyeshadow sometimes. And even with colorful shadows, like if I go into an eyeshadow look, I don't want to be worried that it's gonna fail or that the color combination is just gonna look muddy or off, especially when there's a lot of shades in here that I don't normally wear. So because I feel like I have to plan out my look a little bit more with this palette, I end up not reaching for it. I definitely want to start using it more this month. I do like the formula a lot. I like the shades in here. The shimmer shades are gorgeous in this palette. But whenever I want to do a colorful look, there are some other palettes that I reach for where I know I'm going to get a good look, and I don't have to worry about, is this purple and brown and green gonna all blend together nicely, that I do with this palette. Like, the color combination in here just takes a little bit of creativity that I don't have for an everyday basis. But I definitely want to play with this more for the holidays. So that's how I feel about it. That's a palette that, like, the formula is really great. The colors are really awesome. But if you want it just an all-in-one palette, I don't see myself using it. I mean, I haven't been using it regularly, and if you want like a go-to colorful eyeshadow palette, there are others that are probably more wearable or just like a little bit easier to work with. So the next one that I have not been wearing that often is the Huda Beauty Desert Dust palette. I actually have not worn this too much in like the past 6 weeks either. This is a $65 palette, so I think it's actually overpriced. It's cardboard packaging. You get a ton of shades in here. They're gorgeous. But I feel that it's a little overpriced because of the formula. Like, the mattes in here are a bit more dry, and then some of the shimmers are dry or just glittery. So a lot of the shades that are the standout shades in this palette, you're going to want to use some glitter glue, some Fix Plus, especially the duochromes. You at least need Fix Plus to actually get them to stick to your lid. Or you can use a MAC paint pot, some kind of concealer as a tacky base for some of these shimmer shades. So this palette can take a few more extra steps to end up using, and that's why I don't use it that often. I do love the shades in here, but I have other palettes that have like these reddish tones in it. for colorful looks that I prefer to go to, even like my Modern Renaissance palette. But let me show you guys the two shades that I love the most in this palette. Twilight and Retrograde are kind of the reason that I purchased this palette. But these are duochromes that really need a tacky base. Like, they don't even look that dramatic when I swatch them. So you can see they end up looking very dry and subtle when you want like intense pigmentation. So that's why I haven't been using it. It has the shades that I absolutely love, but the formula makes me not want to use it so much because it just takes a little bit extra effort, extra blending. And some of the shades in here are pretty easy to apply, but the colors that take extra work are the ones that are my favorite in this palette, like the glitter. Of course, with the pressed glitter, you're always gonna need a glitter glue or something else, but for the duochromes, they just take a lot of work to build up. And it's only like an extra 2 minutes when I'm doing my eyeshadow, so it's pure laziness on my part, but it still makes me not want to use it as much because even when I do add Fix Plus or something, it's just like shimmery and it's not like bam in your face. Like, you really need to build it up a lot to get that like intense metallic look with it. And then once I got the Huda Beauty mini palettes, the Obsessions palettes, it actually made me like the Desert Dusk palette even less because these are $27. They are tiny palettes. So you guys can see a size comparison. This is my iPhone 10 and then these are the palettes. They are so tiny for $27, but you actually get a lot of product. And I've been saying this like in several videos now because I'm so impressed with these. The formula are so gorgeous. Like, the pigmentation you get from this is absolutely insane. The Smoky palette especially, super intensely pigmented. Like, these are very metallic, very pigmented. So I'm like, why am I not getting that pigmentation in this palette with the shimmer shades, with the more foiled shades? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. But for sure, I definitely recommend getting the mini palettes versus the Desert Dust palette. If you're interested in the Desert Dust, maybe get the Mauve Obsessions. You get a lot of those same reddish tones. So you guys can see there's a couple similarities with the reds and the purples in this palette and this one. It doesn't have like the browns and stuff, but maybe also get the warm brown palette to go along with this one instead of getting the Desert Dust palette. I know people love the Desert Dust palette too, but I just definitely prefer these like 100%. All right, so the next palette is kind of just in the middle for me, and this is from Urban Decay. They sent me this like maybe a month after it was released, the Naked Heat palette. I think I just did a get ready with me on my channel using it. I love the shades. I love the formula of this palette. What I don't like is how similar everything is in this palette. Like, if you look at the mattes here and the mattes here, like, they're so similar. The shimmer shades, a lot of them look really similar. There's actually only 4 shimmer shades and they look really similar. Here's 2 of them. Like, so you guys can see, like, they almost, like, if you look at them in a certain light, they are very similar. And then I just added the other 2 shimmer shades. So this one is a bit different on the bottom, but these 3 on top are very similar, so you're not going to get a lot of variety in looks from this palette. The formula is amazing. Like, the swatches are gorgeous, especially the shimmer shades. Even the mattes are really blendable, really easy to use. So I'm really impressed with the formula because I have the Naked 3 palette. I don't like the formula in there. I've tried other Urban Decay palettes where I just find them really dry and like the satins to be more chalky and powdery. These are very smooth and they blend very nicely. So I don't think anyone will have an issue with the formula. But so many shades are so similar that you're not going to get, like, I have like maybe 1 or 2 go-to eye looks with this palette, which is fine by me because I love these tones. But for $54, I need like 6 go-to eye looks with a palette. So that's definitely something to keep in mind if you guys are curious about this palette. There's a couple other palettes that are similar shade selections, but you can get a lot more variety in your look. That's definitely a downside with this palette, is just that the shades are really similar, but the formula, it's just gorgeous, and the shades are actually gorgeous. So I'm really happy to have it. If I bought it myself, I would still be happy with it because the formula is really great. But there's some other palettes where you can get similar looks and then get also more looks than the ones that you can get with the Naked Heat. Alright, so the next palette I definitely recommend above the Naked Heat. You guys know I've been loving this. It was in my monthly favorites, the Tarte Toasted palette. This is $46. You get 12 shades in it. It's very similar, but you get a lot more wearable shades. I'll show you guys a comparison of just like the colors in both. And I do talk a little bit more about how they compare to each other in my Tarte Toasted review. All my reviews I'll link in my description box because I did a review or a video on all of these palettes. But I definitely prefer the shades in here compared to this one. You just get a lot more variety in the tones in here, and even the shimmer shades are a lot more dramatic, or just like more dramatically different compared to the shimmer shades in here. So I definitely recommend this one over the Naked Heat palette. And I just like that there's a lot of very natural shades in here too, so you don't need to commit to an orange look or a purpley look. You do have like a neutral brown, like all of these are more neutral and not like fiery compared to this middle row, and then this bottom row is very neutral as well. So I love this. This is a go-to palette for me. It's like one of my new favorite neutral palettes. It's just an awesome palette. I've been wearing it so much since I purchased it. I've been traveling with it, and I know I keep complaining about this shade up here, the shade Candle, and when it swatches it actually looks just fine, but it's just so chalky. I always need to mention it because every time I open the palette, this shade bothers me just because it's so chalky, and having that shade be chalky is what stops this palette from being like my perfect palette. So I get a little bit mad at this shade every time I look at it, but 11 out of the 12 shades in here are awesome. Definitely highly recommend this palette. This has been such a game changer and the reason that I've not worn a bunch of other palettes, because you get really natural looks, you can get some fiery looks, and then you can also get like a smoky nighttime look with this palette. I have a couple shades in here on my eyes today, and I combined it with another palette. I'll go ahead and talk about that one. The next palette that I've been wearing a ton along with this one is the Laura Lee Cat's Pajamas palette. Oh my god, this palette is messy. I've been wearing this palette so much. So in every outfit photo I posted on Instagram in probably the past 2 months, I am wearing this palette. Like I always do very neutral looks for shooting outfits. I always shoot 2 weeks worth of outfits for my blog and for Instagram at once, and I want my makeup to look cohesive with any look that I'm doing, like any outfit that I'm doing. So I always have a go-to look with this palette that takes me like 2 minutes. Bomb Diggity is my favorite transition shade I think that I own. This palette came out in October. I did get this as PR like a week before it was released, and there's a significant dent in this transition shade. I've been wearing it so much. It just suits my complexion really, really nicely. And then Redonkulous, I don't know if you guys can tell. Yeah, you can tell probably that there's like a bit missing from here because I wear that shade so much. So that's what I'm wearing on my eyes today. These 3 colors, and also Okie Dokie. Like that's just like my go-to look, and then I do a little bit of Kooky like in my outer corner. So I love this for like an everyday 5-minute makeup look because the formula of the mattes and the shimmers are both really, really great. It's a very neutral palette, but like if you don't have a lot of time to get ready in the morning but you still want a beautiful eye look, like this combination is my absolute favorite. You guys have been seeing it in so many of my videos in the past like 2 months. So that's what's on my eyes. And then all I added in today was this dark tone Crackle from the Tarte Toasted. That's the only thing that's missing from Cat's Pajamas to me, is like a dark brown or just like a deeper brown color, because you do have these browns. And then if you want to darken anything up, you have to use a purple shade or a black. So I wish there was a darker brown in here, but this has been my go-to for when I really don't have a lot of time to do my makeup. So both Cat's Pajamas and Tarte Toasted have been my go-to palettes for everyday looks. I have a couple like foolproof looks with both of these palettes, especially when I don't have a lot of time to do my makeup, or I have to get ready like early in the morning and I still need to do like a full face of makeup, but I need to know that it's gonna look good and I can do my makeup in like 20-30 minutes instead of like a lot longer with some other palettes. So those are my favorites for everyday makeup looks where you can still look really glam but just take like very minimal effort. So next we have the Too Faced Just Peachy Matte palette, and I bought this as a transition shade palette. And what I mean is, like, I don't like matte eye looks. I never wear matte eye looks. I did maybe 1 or 2 tutorials using just this palette. I love shimmers. Like, I blend shimmers into my crease. Like, I like shimmers all over my eyes. So I bought this because I bought into the hype. I love the Too Faced Peach collection. I love the Sweet Peach palette. I just really like this collection a lot for some reason. I like scented makeup a lot. And I also wanted to get this to use along with my Too Faced Sweet Peach palette because I feel like there's a couple like in between transition shades that are missing from that palette. So I bought this to go along with that palette. Surprisingly, I have barely worn that palette since I purchased this because I've been using my other really neutral palettes that I just mentioned instead of that. So I haven't been reaching for this one as much ever since I got the Laura Lee palette and the Tarte Toasted palette because I use the transition shades in those so much, and I use the transition shades in those with some of my other palettes instead of this. But before I got those palettes, I would use this palette a ton. I would incorporate a couple of the transition shades in here with all my other palettes. So I do really like the palette. I really like the formula. But now that I have those other palettes, I'm not reaching for it as much. So if you want like an all matte palette, I definitely recommend this. But if you want this as like a transition shade palette, I would go for probably the Tarte Toasted instead of it because you're getting a lot of those similar warm like peachy and purple shades. Like some of the mattes in here are very, very similar. But then you could do like more variety of looks with this palette compared to this one. So that's basically my thoughts about it. I don't wear it as much because I have this palette and some other neutral palettes now that I wear more. But it's still a good palette. I'm still happy to have it. I love the packaging. I love the smell of it. And the formula is actually really, really good. So that's where I stand with this one. I'm really happy to have it in my collection. But I've just been wearing a lot of other palettes and using those for transition shades more than this one. All right, so next I think this is the palette of 2017. This is the Jaclyn Hill Morphe palette. So big, I feel like I need to move out of the way for it. And I do have the older packaging, and believe it or not, I just like scrubbed the outside of this packaging to clean it off. And it still looks really gross. Like, I use this palette so much and it gets so dirty, which is really upsetting. I totally see myself buying this palette with a new packaging eventually. I'm not going to hit pan on any shade anytime soon. But this palette, like, it literally just took my breath away just looking at it. I haven't touched this palette in a couple weeks because I've been using all my new palettes that I've been reviewing so much. But this is, like, I think this is the palette of the year. Like, this is an awesome palette. This just looks great. I love this palette so much. I'm looking at it like it's an old friend. Like, I'm like, oh, I miss you. It's been a minute. I've been using all these other palettes in the past couple weeks. But this is an amazing palette. Just get it. It's an amazing palette. Nobody will be disappointed. I'm saying that with such confidence. I don't think anybody would be disappointed. The formula is so amazing. Color selections. There's a couple of things I would change. Like, I know everybody says they want a matte brow bone color. I definitely agree with that. And because I love coppery and champagne eye colors, I wish there was maybe one or two more shimmers that are like more natural in here, because you do get these light tones, but they're like almost too light, and then these tones in here are almost too dramatic. I wish there was something in between for like a quick like go-to natural eye look with this palette. But other than that, this palette is basically perfect to me. Like, the formula is amazing. The shimmers, the mattes in here are absolutely amazing. It like restored my faith in Morphe makeup. I have the 35O palette. I did a review video. I will put my Jaclyn Hill palette review video. Actually, that's the only one I did. Reviewing this and comparing it to the 35O. I show you guys color swatch comparisons. Talk about the formula comparison, and I definitely think that the formula of this is so much better. Let me know if you guys got the new Morphe, just any of their newer products after this one, because I'm wondering if the formula is the same as this or they went back to their old drier formula. Just let me know that in the comments, because there's been a couple of palettes that I've been interested in from Morphe, but I want it to be the same quality as this. So highly recommend this. This is an amazing palette. I don't think you'll be disappointed if you purchase it. If you've been debating it, go ahead and get it. I just think it's an awesome formula. Definitely great value, really awesome quality. So lastly, I'm gonna mention some ColourPop palettes, and ColourPop comes out with palettes every single week now. Like, I don't know how they do it, but they're coming out with some palettes like literally every week, and they're coming out with some actually like really awesome palettes. Like, I like what ColourPop is doing right now. So I have 3 ColourPop palettes so far: the Yes Please palette, the I Think I Love You palette, and the All I See Is Magic palette. I have reviews and tutorials on all of these palettes. I just reviewed this one like a week ago. The first one is the Yes Please palette. I have not worn this since the summer, and mine looks so dirty. Oh my god. It's the same packaging as this Morphe palette, like that NARS packaging that just gets so messy. But I really like the shades in here. And this is something like, it has some of those similar tones as the Huda Beauty palette, like those reddish, really fiery shades. The shimmers in here are definitely very vibrant, very pigmented shades. You get some really nice quality shadows. These are like the best eyeshadows I've tried for the price point. And not just that, I just think that they're really great shadows in general, like regardless of the price. If they stepped up the packaging, I'd be totally down to pay like $40. I don't want to put that out in the world because I hope that never happens. But I think I would still be okay with it because the formula is actually really, really good. So I hope they stay affordable. But if they end up like getting a little bit fancier now that they're at Sephora and just stepping it up a little bit, I won't be too mad at it because I think the formula speaks for itself. I think it's really great. And then I like the I Think I Love You palette, so far the best out of all the eyeshadow palettes I have from ColourPop. I love that this packaging is just sleek and shiny and it doesn't get dirty. Both the Yes Please palette and the I Think I Love You palette, these are both $16. They have 12 shades in it. This palette is gorgeous. This is a really pretty palette for the holidays, for like New Year's looks. Like you're getting some really pretty shimmer shades in this palette. They're very pigmented, just very gorgeous shades. Like they apply so nicely. Even the mattes blend out so nicely. They apply really pigmented, not chalky at all. So basically these palettes are like drugstore prices for a really high quality, high-end formula. Really, really love the ColourPop pressed powdered eyeshadows. I've just been really loving them all year. And then the most recent one I've gotten is the All I See Is Magic palette. This is the one I like the least out of the three that I mentioned, but the shades in here are so gorgeous. The mattes, like these bottom mattes, are not that pigmented. Some of the shimmer shades are a little glittery and have a bit more fallout to them, but then you have some gorgeous shades. Like this one I was wearing in my last two videos. This shade is so pretty. I wore this one in which one? My top 5 highlighter video. So these two shades really make this palette for me. And I just shared my review of the holiday palette just a few days ago. But overall, you get some really phenomenal shades, and then you also get some really, really average shades, or a couple below average shades in here too. So it's kind of like all over the place with the formula. But at least the shades that I find phenomenal in this palette, like the standout shades, are the ones that have amazing quality. So it makes up for the like mediocre formula of the more like neutral shades in here. But overall, the I Think I Love You palette from ColourPop, this is the one that is the best quality to me and like the most wearable, really awesome shadows. The Yes Please palette too, but this one is a bit more wearable to me. I guess that's everything for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this roundup of my favorite eyeshadow palettes, or all the eyeshadow palettes that I've reviewed in the past couple months. So many of them are my favorites, and I did do dedicated videos on every single one of these palettes. I had tutorials on them all. I'm pretty sure I have tutorials on all of them on my channel, so I'm going to do a playlist of all the palettes that I mentioned, and I'll link that in my description box in case you guys want to know more about each palette, see swatches and everything like that. That will be in my description box, as well as my 20K giveaway, so make sure you're checking out all that information. And definitely let me know in the comments which palettes you have picked up, which ones are your favorites, which ones are your least favorites in the comments. So that is everything for today's video. If you guys liked it, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And I'll talk to you guys soon in my next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.